Welcome, Venkatesh.
Hello.
Hello, good to see you. Let's have everybody join in.
Oh, it's at 11:30. I thought it was at 11:10. I'm sorry. Very early.
Just a second. Let me just. Hi, welcome, Sandeep.
How are you doing?
We're doing fantastic. How are you?
All well. Let me try and put the virtual background first.
Absolutely. Perfect for the sessions. Right. So while everybody is thinking and designing the questions, right? Let me, ask before I hand over it to Rajneesh, who's the moderator for the session. So what made Sandeep and Gitanjali pick up this topic?
I guess we should ask Rajneesh.
Yes.
Both of us. He was the one who put this together.
Absolutely.
I thought I was supposed to put questions to you, but you are checking whether I have taken the right guard. Okay, a quick answer to Devishi, your question is that I am quite fascinated as much as I am with coaching as I am with design thinking. And Sandeep, a part of his introduction is that he's a prolific writer, and you would find fantastic articles written by him on the Forbes Coaching Council journal as well as on LinkedIn. So I was reading a recent article and reflected on it by putting a comment, and that triggered some kind of a discussion with Sandeep. And then lo and behold, Gitanjali also joins in with an equal amount of passion. And that's how this whole idea got germinated.
Very nice, very nice. So not keeping you from, the people who are going to demystify how design thinking now as we speak, maybe, if it was before pandemic, before the new normal, the discussion would have been very different. But what does it mean now? What does it mean for creating that unknown space in the future? So welcome, Cindy, welcome Neha, welcome Peter, welcome Pradeep, welcome Remaya, welcome Sanjay, Sivraj, and Swati, and many more who are going to join about demystifying coaching and design thinking, and with the applicative lenses of Gitanjali Saxena, Sandeep Jain, moderated by the director of our education, Rajneesh Mathur. So I am super curious. Up to you, Rajneesh.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Devishi, and a very warm welcome to all our guests, to all our coaches from within the chapter, as well as from across India, as well as abroad. So we are up for a very, very exciting fireside chat. Shall I dare say, in the heat of summers in India. Without further ado, I have the great pleasure to introduce our two panelists, or should I say, I can't say they are chatters because it's a fireside chat. But definitely, let me begin with what is common between our two colleagues who are going to share their thoughts on coaching and design thinking. So I picked up that both Gitanjali and Sandeep are PCCs from ICF. They are entrepreneurs in their own right, having created a space for themselves with their clients. And of course, they are very successful practicing coaches. Having said this, please allow me to bring another track, which is an individual track. So Gitanjali is a co-founder and director with Lagom Works, and Sandeep Jain is a leadership coach, a strategy consultant. He is also a CEO and founder of Value Unlocked Private Limited. So why don't we ask both Gitanjali and Sandeep to share more about uh, your respective introductions before we get on with our question.
So we're making a shift now. It's
Yes.
going to be gentlemen first rather than ladies first. So
Okay.
gentlemen, over to you.
Thank you for that privilege. So great to meet everybody. Good morning. So just a quick introduction. I have spent about 25 years in finance and business leadership roles across Asia Pacific, worked in various segments, FMCG, media, lifestyle, pharma. Started my third career as an independent consultant coach, 5 years ago with Value Unlocked. And at Value Unlocked, we primarily work in three domains. We work in the domain of leadership coaching, both individual and team coaching, strategy consulting, very execution-focused consulting work, actually. And thirdly, very active in the startup scale-up ecosystem. So that's predominantly what we do. My purpose at Value Unlocked, I would like to believe, is that, helping people complete the amazing stories that they want to write about themselves in the real world. And this could be with the organizations or individuals, and we do it through, deliver it through coaching, consulting, advisory, facilitation, and, design thinking is obviously something which we are going to discuss, but that's part of my go-to delivery model for helping clients achieve what they are looking for. So over to you, Gitanjali. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sandeep. So 25 plus years of experience now. And I would like to start with my personal vision, since we've been talking about Guru Rabindranath Tagore since morning. So where the mind is without fear and head is held high, into that heaven of freedom, let every mind awake. So that is what drives me as an individual and as a coach. Currently, my firm, Lagom Works, specializes in transformation work, and we work across the spaces of culture, experience design, and social impact. I'm certified in advanced design thinking from Stanford University, and we leverage design thinking extensively in the work that we do. And therefore, when Rajneesh proposed this fireside chat, I was very excited. And we really hope that we'll be able to share some amazing parallels, complementarities, and examples with you as we go through today's conversation. Rajneesh, over to you.
Yeah, thank you so much. These are extremely inspiring, introductions, and so let's delve straight away into, into your area of work about which you just briefly spoke. So let me ask, and maybe Sandeep can take this question first, is that how do you apply design thinking in your work?
A big part of my work actually is helping organizations think the new and different. And I think when they have to think about new and different, the new and emerging business opportunities, you have to put a framework in place for them to think and to get to move on with those ideas. And for me, design thinking is the space that I use basically, or let's say the principles of design thinking to help them carve out these journeys. I would like to believe that whenever we keep, customers, users, employees, partners at the center of our, the work that we are doing, in some ways we are leveraging design thinking principles. And that's the kind of space, especially when one is working with teams, one tends to use it very, very actively. So yeah, so that's a little bit, how I apply DT in the work that I do.
Geeta, would you also like to elaborate a little more?
Sure. And I'll go back to what Debishi had shared in the start, which is things have really shifted post the pandemic. So, as we are working with corporates, as we are working with industry leaders, we've realized that a lot of practices, processes, and mindset that were existing and serving them well before the pandemic are not really serving them very well at this point of time. And therefore, when we use the power of interdisciplinary research, when we use the power of social sciences, when we use the power of combining the big data with the thick data, and we use the power of the DT mindset and process, that is where we have found that it has been really useful for carving out focus areas for these leaders that could give them the kind of results that they're aspiring for. So that's the work that we have been doing, Rajneesh,
Mhm.
and we'll be happy to share further details.
Sure. So, I'm being conscious of the fact that some of our audience members may have joined the session because they are curious to know about design thinking. And you mentioned about your Stanford certification. So, we are not going to let you go without asking you, how do you define design thinking in your own words, Geeta?
That's a great question, Rajneesh, right? And I guess a very apt starting point for the discussion that we're going to have.
Mhm.
So, while design thinking has become very fashionable during the past 15 years, it's really seeped into the corporate language as we know it today. The genesis is actually almost 5 decades old.
Mhm.
So, in 1970s, Horst Rittel coined the word wicked problems.
Mhm.
And he said that the designers start to shift, they need to start shifting their focus from solving simple problems to really addressing the complex problems that we are facing as humanity.
Mhm.
And we have to thank these leaders, these visionaries, for sowing the foundation of design thinking.
Mhm.
In one line, if I was to define design thinking, I would say it's a human-centered, interdisciplinary approach to solving the VUCA problems of today, wherein we are looking at solutions through the lens of desirability, feasibility, viability, and sustainability. So earlier, desirability, feasibility, and viability were the key lenses. But with the kind of challenges that we are facing as humankind now, sustainability is becoming an important component of the whole problem definition and solutioning process.
Mhm. Thank you, Geeta. That's such a comprehensive definition, and I think I was hearing you very intently. Each word will probably encourage reflection amongst our audience members. So, with that having been shared, let me go back to Sandeep and ask him that with design thinking the way we understand, how do you think is it relevant
Yeah,
for the coaching community? Because there are a lot of coaches amongst us in the group. So,
yeah,
relevance
yeah,
of design thinking in coaching.
yeah. And I'll build on what Gitanjali was saying. The DT philosophy and approach is really built around user focus, iterative process, creative problem solving, a human-centered approach, and collaboration. And the work that we do as coaches, and especially the work we do as team coaches, there is enough and more of commonalities between the two processes. I think the key steps of the design thinking process is really defining the problem, observing users, understanding users' needs, challenging their assumptions, ideating, prototyping, and then testing out what you have built as part of this. And this is exactly what we do as coaches when we engage, even in our individual engagements. And the most important thing I believe is that the core of both design thinking and coaching is empathy. And empathy, as we coaches know, is also very I would say, is spoken about in the cultivating trust and safety competency of coaches. And, that is certainly something which runs through the entire design thinking process and also the coaching process.
Absolutely. And
Absolutely. I think just to
you
add
want
to
to,
what
yeah.
Sandeep was saying, Rajneesh, even when we talk about empathy, during the design thinking journey, it is a combination of various modalities of picking up information about the user. As coaches, we always talk about active listening as being a critical competency when we are having a coaching conversation. But design thinking also focuses on the power of observations. And that is again something that we leverage extensively as coaches. So it is the power of listening and power of observation, which work in conjunction in order to drive shifts, transformation strategies when it comes to both the practices.
Absolutely. So well said. The next one, Geeta, is for you, since you picked the cue. The question is that the area of design thinking has evolved, as the name suggests, from the field of design, and you said it's almost 5 decades old. What are some of the aspects of the DT mindset that coaches can benefit from?
Yeah. Uh, th- again, linking it back to the starting point, which is empathy. We all realize as coaches that it is a very difficult journey wherein we are constantly balancing between the concept of self versus others, right? And that is a journey which we undertake even in a design thinking process. There are three key elements that I would like to share with all our participants today as we deep dive into really understanding user needs. The first one is creative confidence, right? So when we talk about a DT mindset, it is really the ability to not be unbalanced or imbalanced because you have run into a situation where the answers are not clear. And therefore, as a design thinker, we say that that ability to have trust and belief in your own abilities becomes a very important component of what we call the DT mindset. And that is exactly what our coaches do as well. We don't know what we are going to run into as we have a first conversation with our coaches. But every experienced coach will know that whatever tools, arsenal, beliefs they have, that will add value to the conversation. The other important paradigm that we talk about is intersectionality. So when I'm looking at a particular individual, we all know that that individual is an output or outcome of the kind of socio-cultural environment that she or he has grown up in, uh, the demographics that she or he belongs to, as well as now the technological environment that the person has grown up in. And how do we really understand how this confluence is working when it comes to defining values and beliefs becomes an important point for us to reflect on, both as design thinkers and coaches. The second important component and aspect is positionality. So, what do I really think about my own values, beliefs, my own experiences, and what part am I bringing that to a conversation is a very important reflection point for a design thinker. And third is reflexivity, which is understanding that every cause has an effect. And our human belief structures are actually built on this cycle that we talk about. So when we used to be afraid of cats crossing our paths, that is an example of reflexivity. And in this process, everyone is getting impacted, right? I, as a design thinker and coach, is getting impacted, and so is my coachee and other stakeholders. And therefore, spaces for reflection and how am I personally evolving during this journey becomes very important. So 4 elements, Rashneesh: creative confidence, intersectionality, positionality, and reflexivity, uh, equally applicable to both design thinking as well as coaching.
Okay, wonderful.
And if I may just add to what Gitanjali was saying, I think one thing which for me is also a very important DT mindset, which is embracing ambiguity.
Yeah.
And I think it is certainly something which we need to do both in coaching and in the design thinking space. Because we really don't know what we don't know.
Yeah.
And this is the opportunity to find that out. First, as Gitanjali was mentioning, the first and the foremost thing in design thinking is don't assume anything as far as the user is concerned.
Yeah.
Listen, observe, understand, and then build conclusions and, build on those conclusions after that.
Yeah.
Great point. Great point, Sandeep. Thank you for this. So the next question is for you, Sandeep. From
Okay.
mindsets, it is but natural that we recall, with your expert help, what are some of the principles, which are leveraged in design thinking, and those are principles which can come very handy for the coaches.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts?
Yeah. So I think there's been a bit of some this that we've discussed, but for me, a couple of critical things is user centricity and empathy. I think those are principles which are very important, and they are the beginning points of any discussion or any work that we do, any coaching discussion or any work we do in DT. The second is that DT also has a very strong bias for action. It's about ideation, but it's also about experimentation and iteration. And I think, as coaches, that's the biggest challenge that we have. How do we get our clients to move ahead beyond thinking about the change to actually making that change? So that is again something which we can get inspired by the work that is done in DT space. The other is divergence and convergence. So DT is all about helping people bring up a long list of ideas where you don't think about constraints, you don't think about limitations, you don't think about your belief systems. You just list as many ideas as possible, and then come to the convergent point of view, where you decide that what is it exactly which has, let's say, the best on an impact and an effort matrix, which is the one which would probably give you what you are requiring, the most impact with the least effort, let's put it this way. So I think that is again something which is, how to move beyond self-imposed constraints, our own belief systems, and, list out as many things as we can do in the space that we are working in. Yeah, and I think finally closing again a little bit with the same point, that the strong bias for action is really one thing which we as coaches need to learn, practice. And I know we are a slightly different space, and we'll come to that later. But having said that, I think success of a coaching engagement is that how do you help bring that shift in the coaching?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I think
Geeta, you have a point to make?
Yeah, just one point to add to what Sandeep was sharing. The other principle that I've really found useful, both in design thinking and coaching, is the principle of show, don't tell. So, a lot of times when we are trying to understand what the person really needs and what are the meanings that she or he is associating with a certain object or a problem statement that has been put in front of her or him, it is always better to get the person to visualize it. So design thinking is a lot about visualization, and Sandeep can add to that, right? So you're actually trying to get what is there in the mind out on a piece of paper, and it could be any format. It could be a story, it could be a drawing, it could be a metaphor. But that is one principle that I've found extremely useful and applied consistently in both my practices, DT as well as coaching.
And maybe I'll take a moment, and I think we've spoken a lot about empathy. In design thinking, we create what are called empathy maps, which means that you look at the user from different perspectives, belief systems, physicality, etc., etc. Now, in coaching, we may not create an empathy map, as it we may not reduce it to a document. But again, that is something which we very actively do in a coaching engagement. Making mental note and trying to peel the onion layer by layer to understand the space from which the coachee is coming.
And Sandeep, maybe we should share that template at some point of time.
Yeah.
Because it can be a very useful tool for the coaches as well.
Yes.
Yeah, that's a good idea. Absolutely. If you have it ready, you may like to just.
I think it'll be. Yeah.
Okay. So we have spoken about mindset. We have spoken about, just now, we looked at the principles. Now, to make things a little more practical, it's but natural to check what are some of the critical elements of the DT process that coaches can leverage, again, to be better coaches, to enhance their coaching effectiveness. So, Geeta, would you like to take this up? We have. Sorry, Geeta, we just lost you a little bit. At least I did not hear. What did you say?
Am I audible now?
Yes.
Okay. So when we look at the process part of it, one of the models that coaches love is grow model, right? Because intuitively it provides a fantastic structure for guiding a coachee towards a certain action plan. When we talk about design thinking, we talk about a 5-stage process. So it starts with empathy. Once you have the user or stakeholder understanding, you use those insights to define, which is the second state, problem statements that could be deep dived into. Then comes ideation, which Sandeep has already mentioned and outlined. Once we have a list of ideas that we believe are desirable and feasible, we then get into prototyping. We are looking at the viability and sustainability aspects. And finally, take it for the testing phase. So, if it's a product or service design, you will take a concept to the end user. If it is a transformation intervention, you take the concept to the stakeholders who are going to be impacted by it to see how are they receiving that particular intervention which is being panned out. So if we compare the grow model with the design thinking process, there's complete sync when we talk about define, ideate, and prototype. The two elements that we could perhaps be leveraging more as coaches are the starting points, which is empathy. So looking at templates like empathy map that Sandeep already talked about, as well as the last stage, which is testing. And the reason why I'm saying it is a lot of time when we're doing corporate assignments as coaches, we finalize an IDP, with the coachee. And the coachee then focuses on making sure that she or he is implementing and progressing on the development plan. But do we create spaces for reflection where the coachee is reflecting on the plan itself, the list of actions, and saying, this is what is working for me, this is not what is working for me, at an individual level, as well as these stakeholders that I really need to work with. Perhaps that is an element that at least I personally have not been able to put too much focus on as part of my coaching journeys. So those two, I would say, would be the core learning points for us as coaches from the DT process. Can we do a deeper job of empathy? And can we create spaces where the coachee gets a chance to reflect on her or his set of actions and see whether they are working for her or him, and and then decide the journey forward.
Hmm.
Sandeep, any perspectives from your side on this?
I can only agree with you, Gitanjali, I would say. So, and you spoke about, I like to, a little bit see a overlap between, let's say, within the develop phase, there is prototyping, for example. And I think as coaches also, when we work with clients, the prototyping in our case is how do you get them to practice some of those behaviors in low risk situations so that they can experience small wins and get the confidence to kind of, build that as part of their behavior set, let's say. So I think, there is quite a bit of overlap, I would say, and prototyping again is something, how do we as coaches make those, what seems like a big challenge or a great opportunity, how can we make the coachee move a little at least in that direction? That is to me, prototyping in the coaching context, let's say.
And let's remind the audience when Sandeep, you mentioned about behaviors, or behavior shifts, they don't happen immediately, at the click of a finger.
Absolutely.
It takes time. So the points that both of you just mentioned in closing to this question of testing, experimentation, on helping the coachee with small wins to start off, and winning his or her confidence that yes, the work that she or he is doing with the coach is actually taking her closer to her goal. I think that's a stepping stone, if I may say so. Right. At this stage, just keeping an eye on the clock, there is one more question that is my favorite. Let me put it this way. What are the points of divergence, if there are any, between coaching and DT? We spoke a lot of similarities, convergence, and maybe you'd like to answer, any one of you. What are some of the things that a coach does, but a design thinker may not be required to do?
Yeah.
Sandeep?
So I think, for me, let's agree that they are two distinct practices. At the end of the day, we are exploring the overlaps, but they are different practices. It has different purpose, different methodologies, and different outcomes. Let's put it this way, right? As we know, design thinking is from the field of product and now service design. And it is used to solve real life problems which users at large face.
Yeah.
In the work that we do as coaches, whether with individuals or with teams, typically we are working with one individual, or we are working with a small set of people, 4 or 5 people, really. So I think there are overlaps, but there are enough divergences between that. The other is, I think we have to understand that for design thinking, we are trying to solve a real life problem which all the users or a big cohort of users faces. And the idea is to find that unmet need which a design thinker, or let's say whatever you are creating, is able to solve. While for coaching, we are diving into an individual to understand, for them to understand their strengths, and also probably the blind spots, or generate awareness which would help them achieve their personal or professional goals. So we are actually in some ways working with belief systems there, and we are trying to bring a shift in those belief systems. In design thinking, we are not so much trying to create a shift in the user. We are trying to understand what is that unmet need of the user, and how is our solution going to solve that need.
Absolutely. Geeta, any thoughts you have?
Yeah, I mean, the one quick thought, DT is heavily biased towards action. So once you finish the empathy stage, then there's a state of constant action because you're converging, you're diverging. In coaching, that's always, that's not always the best plan of action. So we need to be extremely conscious as to where we jump into the actioning phase when it comes to coaching. So that's the only call out from my side.
Yeah, and I'll just like to qualify that, and that's a very, very valid one, Gitanjali. I think that in design thinking, we are actually going to find a solution which will help meet the unmet needs of the client or the users at large, let's say. In coaching, it's quite possible we may not solve the challenge, but we may solve the belief system. We may shift the perspective of the coachee. So just acceptance and awareness without really working on action.
Yeah.
And I think that is a very key point. And thanks, Gitanjali, for bringing that up. Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. In fact, this reminds me, I read a very good book on coaching by Marcia Reynolds. And the title of that book, for those of you who may have read it, was Coach the Person, Not the Problem.
Not the problem. Yes.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And Sandeep, you have clarified in the last leg of your answer quite nicely that creating awareness, bringing about that behavioral shift, those itself are big wins. And as coaches, we realize that the coachee gets empowered to solve the problem or meet his or her goal, from there on, right? So I think fantastic sharing of thoughts and ideas. Thank you so much, both to our experts, Gitanjali Saxena and Sandeep Jain. I see there are certain questions, and so let me just take the time that we have to ask a question that I thought came first. This is from Moshmi Day. She's asking, can design thinking and coaching be used in combination with other approaches like TQM or Six Sigma?
Yeah. My straight answer to that is it can be, and especially if you are working on a team coaching engagement, even more so there. I think they can be, because team coaching is about helping build a new culture, capability, clarity within the team. And I think design thinking can help you do that. Also, I think while as team coaches, you are not responsible to drive the business, but in today's world, VUCA and I even in fact would like to call it VUCA because it's also a hyper connected world today. I think when you think of, or when you help organizations think about new products, new strategies, new markets, a lot of your design thinking principles come into play. And it's such a great process to hold as a facilitator, the design thinking process for the teams, that in fact I use it quite a bit, I would say, in my team coaching engagements.
Absolutely. And the agile methodologies are already being used very, very extensively when it comes to design thinking. So that integration has already happened.
Okay, I see a question, maybe a comment from Shamir, and I see his camera also on. Thank you, Shamir, for being in the session. Would you like to unmute yourself and ask your question?
Rajneesh, thank you so much.
Yes, go ahead, Shamir.
Question comes from mainly in applications of bringing design thinking to organizations. So there's the part of facilitation and mentoring part where you introduce the concept to organizations, and coaching really helps in the enabling aspect of it, really using it in their day and when they start applying it. My question is to the coaches who have done this in situations is, how do you balance that minds in your engagements with the coachee? How do you balance the mentoring aspect of it with the coaching aspect? Because often when teams are still learning design thinking, they may fall into common traps of design thinking, right? So how do you help them through the process without going into the mentoring? Or if you have to merge mentoring with coaching, right? Maybe not pure coaching, but there is a phase of doing that. So I'm curious around how do you all as coaches show up in those spaces, but then also navigate as when needed for the coachee. So I'd love to hear your experiences and tips around that.
Oh, thanks, Shamir. First of all, people who don't know, Shamir represents the IDEO, as you can see. And, I know him also from some of my past interactions with him. So Shamir, what I end up doing, and I don't know what Gitanjali does, is that sometimes, especially when you're working in team coaching engagements, you a little bit move out of your coach mode. And what I normally do is that I have a session, which could be a couple of hours, where I take them through the design thinking process. So the mindsets, the traps, the empathy maps, and why it is important, and all that, and build a bit of a background. I don't even consider that as part of coaching because it is not coaching, right? But I think it's important. You don't know what you don't know, right? So there is that you have to do that work a little bit to help them think through that. So that's the first part of it. The second part of it is that, which is the coaching technique. How can I ask the right kind of questions so that even if they don't understand the process, they are still able to stay true to the process? So to me, I think, and actually, even if I don't do the first part, if I have the right questions phrased, I can still hopefully, put the design thinking methodology at work, even if I don't call it that way. So yeah, that's how I do it.
Very true.
Anjali.
Shami, I think just to add on to what Sandeep was saying, uh, both of them are actually complementary to each other. Personally, in the work that we do, especially during the empathy phase and during the points of divergence, that is where coaching becomes a very powerful tool. When you are converging, you do need certain guidance, and that is where the mentoring hat becomes very, very useful. But when you are getting the teams to really diverge, go beyond their boundaries, coaching process can be very, very powerful. Does that answer your question?
It actually prompts more questions.
I know.
Specifically,
we take it offline.
Yes.
sure.
or we plan a follow-up session where Shamir, you educate us even more on design thinking first.
No.
Absolutely.
I think we're learning from each other a lot. So thank you so much for taking that question. Definitely connect with you all after this as well.
Right.
Yeah, sure, Shamir.
Yeah, so I see there are a few more questions in the chat box, and I am also mindful of the fact that our next session is scheduled at 12:15,
Yeah.
which is what we are inching towards. May I just request some of our colleagues who joined for this session who have taken the trouble to write on the chat box your questions. We may not get the chance to answer them, but since we will have the recordings of the chat and we can, direct these questions to Sandeep and Gitanjali, if that's okay, we can come back to you with their perspectives a little later. Is what I am proposing.
Absolutely, Ashish.
Okay, thank you, Gitanjali.
And happy to connect with everybody on LinkedIn. And some people I obviously see, I know them well, and I'll pick up the phone and talk to them on the questions which are on the chat. And others whom I don't know, really happy to connect.
Yeah.
Same here. Please feel free to reach out on LinkedIn as well.
So thank you so much, both of you, for a wonderful, wonderful session. I know what I am taking away from this session is, how, and this is probably, conscious of the fact that a large number of coaches or would-be coaches are connected with us on this session. So what I'm taking away is that how, when I reflect on what you have shared, both of you, and thank you very much for that, how does it connect with coaching competencies? Like a very simple competency of building empathy, active listening, right? Observation when we listen, right? And so those are few very powerful elements which I am taking away, and I'm sure our audience is also absorbing, soaking all of that. So there's a lot that each one of us have to do while we reflect on what both of you have shared. And with that, I will hand over back to Devishi. She has already posted a link for feedback, a quick feedback from all of you, but not before thanking one more time Sandeep and Gitanjali for your time and your perspective. And thank you.
Taking a moment to thank you, Rajneesh, for having suggested this. We tremendously enjoyed it. I'm sure Gitanjali did as much as I. And obviously, thanks to all the participants who were here, kind of, as part of this session. Thanks so much. You were very insightful with your questions.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. But
you,
before we
Devashi.
leave, we have created such a beautiful place where marrying, coaching and design thinking. So lovely. We want a pic, right? So we invite all of you to take a moment, come on camera and capture this space.
We want a picture and we want people.
Yes, everyone, please turn on your camera. Thank you. Thank you so much, Neha. Thank you so much, Cindy, Peter, Kanish, Christine, Amani, Shivraj, Dilek, Madhurima, Moshmi, and Samir. Pradeep, good to see you. So lovely. What should we say?
One more.
Okay, one more. 1, 2, 3. Look bright. Thank you. Thank you so much. So I've shared a feedback form. Please share your comments and see you in the next session. If somebody who has not registered for the next session and don't know how to do it, I am sharing the PDF one more time. And I really liked Samir, you brought up the IDEO side of it. So coming from a design background, like the conversation without Bill, Dave, and IDEO, design thinking wouldn't be complete. So this conversation continues. Thank you so much. See you in the other session. Bye.
Thank you.